Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. The death toll from the apartment complex fire in Hong Kong continues to rise as rescue and recovery efforts continue following Hong Kong's worst fire in 77 years. The search is continuing for hundreds of residents that are still unaccounted for. Here in South Korea, lawmakers have voted to pass an arrest motion for the People Power Party's former floor leader, Chu Kyung-ho, who's accused of interfering with the National Assembly's vote to lift the martial law declaration last year. U.S. President Donald Trump called for a full review of Afghan immigrants who entered the country during the Biden administration. His remarks come after the suspect in the shooting of 2 National Guard soldiers near the White House was identified as an Afghan national who arrived in the U.S. in 2021. We begin this morning in Hong Kong, where the fire at an apartment complex has now largely been extinguished. At least 94 people died in the blaze, and hundreds are still missing. Authorities are now moving to find the cause of the fire as well as who is responsible. Our Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
Charred towers and blackened empty window frames are all that remain of Hong Kong's Wang Fuk Court housing complex. These scars are the result of a 24-hour battle against flames that consumed the residential high-rises. As of early Friday morning, 94 people are confirmed dead, including a rescue team member, and more than 70 are injured after Hong Kong's deadliest fire in nearly 80 years. Hundreds of people are also still unaccounted for.
And for the firefighting operation, we encounter particular difficulties in several areas. Like the fire was spreading exceptionally fast, exceptionally rapid. So as you can see, the fire spread quickly to all the 7 blocks of the estate.
As recovery efforts continue, the investigation has turned to accountability. Police have arrested 3 executives from Prestige Construction, the firm contracted to work on renovations at the complex.
Police arrested 3 men around their 50s at midnight. Who are the company executives in charge of the renovation at Wang Fuk Court? They are being detained at the moment.
They are being held on suspicion of manslaughter. Authorities seized documents and digital records during a raid on the company's offices, investigating allegations that grossly negligent practices and unsafe materials were used. Investigators are specifically examining the bamboo scaffolding and green mesh that encased the building, which may have accelerated the fire spread. Survivors, many of whom are elderly, have been displaced to makeshift shelters in nearby shopping malls. While community donation drives are providing immediate necessities, the long-term housing prospects for these residents remain uncertain.
I feel very touched by these things. I can wear this later. These will be useful for me tonight. I will stay at my friend's house temporarily.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has ordered an all-out effort to manage the aftermath of the fire, underscoring the political sensitivity of the disaster. With the cost of housing a long-standing source of public discontent, authorities are moving rapidly to contain the fallout, viewing the tragedy as a critical test of governance for the region. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Here in South Korea, President Lee has stressed the importance of Korea's defense industry on the global stage as he returned home from a long overseas trip. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
President Lee Jae-myung opened the weekly meeting with his senior aides on Thursday by noting global interest in South Korea's defense industry the day after returning home from his 10-day-long trip to the Middle East and Africa that also took him to the G20 summit in South Africa.
국제 질서가 점점 불안정해지고 또 자국 이기주의가 심해지다 보니까 국가 간 대결 양상도 점차 심각해져 갑니다. 그래서 그런지 이 방위 산업과 무기 체계에 대한 관심들이 매우 높다고 판단이 되었습니다.
He added that he felt the horrors of the war-torn Gaza Strip during his trip to the MENA region. Given such a situation, it was no coincidence that the arms industry and weapons topped the agenda as the South Korean leader met his foreign counterparts during the trip. President Lee called for unity by the people to raise the nation's economic, defense, and diplomatic capabilities, apparently mindful of division and conflict at home.
지금 있는 역량을 최대한 모아서 국제사회 질서 속에서 경쟁을 하더라도 매우 부족한데 불필요하게 우리 자신의 역량을 낭비하는 일이 최소화되면 좋겠다는 생각이.
The South Korean president, who's just 6 months into his presidency, has had a busy diplomatic schedule throughout the year as he either attended or hosted major multilateral dialogue, engaging with the G7, UN, ASEAN, APEC, and G20 members at a time of deepening global uncertainties.
이 과정에서 정부는 대한민국의 글로벌 외교를 복원시키기 위해서 모든 노력과 역량을 투입했습니다. 그 결과 우리 외교의 위상이 한층 높아지고 외교 지평도 크게 넓어졌다는 게 체감되었습니다.
He instructed his aides to work together with relevant ministries to materialize deliverables that were yielded through his summit diplomacy during the past half year. Lee has been stressing pragmatic diplomacy centered on national interests since taking office, with a focus on bolstering cooperation with the global community on AI, cutting-edge technologies, defense industry, and K-culture. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now turning to the National Assembly, a plenary session kicked off on Thursday to address a number of bills, including a high-profile motion to arrest the former floor leader of the main opposition party. Our political correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
The National Assembly held a vote on a motion to arrest Chu Kyung-ho, the former floor leader of the People Power Party. The session began at 2 p.m. on Thursday, and the vote on the motion, conducted by anonymous secret ballot, passed with 172 votes in favor, 4 against, 2 abstentions, and 2 invalid ballots out of 180 lawmakers present. Chu was accused of interfering with the Assembly's vote to lift the December 3rd martial law declaration last year. Under the Constitution, sitting lawmakers cannot be arrested or detained during a session without parliamentary consent. When prosecutors seek an arrest warrant for a lawmaker during a session, a motion to arrest must be approved by the Assembly. The motion passes with a majority of lawmakers present and a majority of those present voting in favor. As the ruling Democratic Party supporting the motion holds the majority, its approval was widely expected. With the motion approved, Chu will undergo a hearing in court, where he will face a pre-arrest interrogation to determine whether a detention warrant will be issued, a session expected to be scheduled for early next month. Lawmakers also reviewed 7 public welfare bills, including the so-called Castillo Act, which would establish a presidential committee to strengthen the nation's steel industry and provide subsidies, loans, and tax benefits for green steel technology and investment. The Democratic Party had initially sought to pass around 90 bills, but reached a compromise with the People Power Party to take up the remaining measures alongside the national budget on December 2nd. National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik urged both parties to prioritize public welfare over political clashes as the budget deadline nears.
Instead of sparring, I ask both parties to do their best until the end to secure every possible budget for the people.
The session took place amid heightened tensions over calls for a parliamentary investigation into the Daejang-dong real estate scandal in Seongnam during President Lee Jae-myung's tenure as mayor. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Concerns are mounting in South Korea as the Korean won has fallen to its lowest level in months against the US dollar, prompting authorities to vow to stabilize foreign exchange market volatility. For more on the domestic economy and its broader implications, we're joined today by Professor Shin Myung-gyu, Associate Professor of Economics at Yonsei University. Professor Shim, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
So the Korean won is now at its weakest level against the dollar since April, right? With $1 at close to 1,500 Korean won. What's driving this trend, and when can we expect the exchange rate to come down?
My expectation is that such a trend, the low valued Korean won relative to other currencies, would be somewhat continued over time unless there is a fundamental change in the exchange market. First of all, uncertainty about the trade and policy does not seem to be fully resolved even after the fact sheet was released about 2 weeks ago. I, together with my colleagues, conducted several empirical analysis and found that regardless of uncertainty surrounding the Korean economy, Korean won loses its value when the uncertainty level increases. Given that the Korean economy faces different types of uncertainties these days, I guess the rally would continue. Second, the investment atmosphere is not favorable for stabilizing the exchange rate. Investors, whether they are from domestic or foreign, lower their exposure to the Korean stock market, and this potentially lowers demand for Korean won. Lastly, the expected capital outflow to the U.S. due to the tariff agreement is not so small, which makes the investors to worry about the future of Korean won.
I see. And the Bank of Korea decided to keep its interest rate steady yesterday. What's behind this decision, and when can we expect the central bank to start cutting rates?
It's mainly because there is a tension between factors to increase the rate and those to lower it. Let me first point out the factors that hinder the interest rate cut. First, the rapid hike of the exchange rate that we just discussed is one important reason, because further widening interest rate gap between Korea and the US might result in further capital outflow. Second, the inflation rate in Korea, which is the most important factor when deciding the interest rate, seems to show the sign that it might increase. From August to October, if you look at the data, it has steadily increased from 1.7% to 2.4%, which is now above the target inflation rate of the Bank of Korea, 2%. Now, let me explain what prevents the BOK to increase the interest rate. First, the macroeconomy, which shows some positive signs of growth these days, may enter the recession unexpectedly if the BOK increases the interest rate too early, because consumption and investment might become lower due to the high interest rate. Second, the household debt has been steadily accumulated over time, and it achieves its peak level every month. And if the interest rate hikes, it will increase the burden of the households, again, a factor that lowers the growth rate of South Korea. So the Bank of Korea needs to wait until which factor dominates the other to make a significant move.
Right. You just mentioned that the economy is showing some signs of recovery, and the central bank also revised its economic outlook for next year by raising it from 1.6 to 1.8%. What's your take on this?
Yeah, revising the expectation on the economy is always a good news if it is an upward adjustment. First point to note is that the inflation expectations in Korea has increased from 2 to 2.1%, and together with greater GDP growth rate, it indicates that the economy expands due to the greater demand. It might be a positive response of consumption to the transfer to the household that was given in the previous quarter. Second, while the exchange rate has become too high during the last several months, as we just discussed, this could be a favorable situation for the exporting firms because the lower Korean won value, increases the price competitiveness of the exporting firms, so that it makes the export from South Korea to the other country to increase. And given that the export is really an important factor for the Korean economy, it also contributes to the upward adjustment of the outlook. But what we should notice is that the uncertainty surrounding the global economy as well as the Korean economy is still there, and pressure on prices in the US and Korea might put downward pressure in the near future. So careful execution of both monetary and fiscal policies is necessary.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Shim, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Over in the United States, the suspect in the recent shooting of two National Guardsmen near the White House was identified as an Afghan national who entered the country in 2021 under a special immigration program created for Afghans who assisted U.S. forces. This is now leading to an immigration crackdown as the government announced that it has suspended all immigration processing for Afghan nationals indefinitely. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday called for a full review of Afghan immigrants who entered the U.S. during former President Joe Biden's administration.
I can report tonight that based on the best available information, the Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth. He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on those infamous flights that everybody was talking about.
His remarks came after two National Guard soldiers were shot and critically wounded in downtown Washington, an attack that immediately heightened security concerns in the Capitol. Within hours of President Trump's statement, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced that it had suspended all immigration processing for Afghan nationals indefinitely. The agency did not provide a timeline for resuming processing and said the pause would remain in effect while federal officials conduct a broader security review. Meanwhile, U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Jeanine Pirro, identified the suspect as Ramanullah Rakhanwal. Officials say Rakhanwal arrived in the United States in 2021 under a special immigration program created for Afghans who assisted U.S. forces. He had helped guard American personnel during the Kabul airport evacuation, serving in a unit known locally as the Scorpion Forces. That unit initially operated under the CIA before becoming part of Afghanistan's National Directorate of Security.
The suspect, he has been identified as Ramanullah Rakhanwal, a 29-year-old Afghan who entered the United States under Biden's Operation Allies Welcome, a program following the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Rakhanwal's background has now become central to the political debate, with lawmakers questioning whether emergency screening during the withdrawal was sufficient. Investigators are reviewing his immigration record, his activities in the United States, and any potential motive behind the attack. They're also coordinating with defense and intelligence officials to understand whether his past service may have influenced his movements. As Washington increases its security posture and federal agencies continue their review, President Trump says his administration will pursue what he calls an immediate reassessment of Afghan entry programs in the weeks ahead. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, TikTok and other social media platforms are propelling Korean beauty products onto major retail shelves across the United States. Now, that's according to a CNBC report on Thursday, which reported the rapid spread of Korean cosmetics thanks to viral posts and influencer-driven trends. According to market research firm Nielsen IQ, U.S. K-beauty sales are expected to reach $2 billion this year, a 37% jump from last year. The research firm says basic skincare remains the main engine of growth, while hybrid products that blend makeup with features like sun protection are also expanding steadily.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-han, and this is The World Now. In Turkey, Pope Leo XIV warned that escalating global conflicts are endangering the future of humanity as he began his first overseas trip since becoming Pope in May. Speaking in Ankara on Thursday, he said the world is facing a heightened phase of violence driven by military and economic power struggles. The Pope arrived for a 6-day trip that includes a visit to Lebanon and was welcomed by President Erdogan, who said the visit comes at a critical moment amid regional wars such as in Gaza. Pope Leo emphasized unity, peace, and protection of civilians, saying humanity must not give in to choices that undermine justice and stability. In Peru, former President Pedro Castillo was sentenced to 11 years and 5 months in prison on Thursday for attempting to dissolve Congress during a political crisis 3 years ago. Judges ruled that Castillo's move to suspend the legislature on December 7, 2022, while facing impeachment hearings, amounted to rebellion and conspiracy against the state. He was removed from office and arrested the same day. Prosecutors said he tried to undermine Peru's constitution while Castillo denied wrongdoing, calling his actions, quote, a document without consequence. His brief presidency amid removal triggered years of nationwide unrest. In Sri Lanka, heavy rain triggered landslides and floods that have killed more than 40 people and left more than 20 missing, according to the country's Disaster Management Center on Thursday. Most of the deaths were reported in the central mountainous districts of Badulla and Nuwala Ilia, where roads and rail lines were blocked by mud, rocks, and fallen trees. Severe weather that began last week intensified over the weekend, flooding homes and fields and forcing authorities to halt passenger trains in several areas. Officials say this is Sri Lanka's deadliest weather event since last year. In the United States on Thursday, New York City launched the 99th annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, boasting 28 floats, 11 marching bands, and 34 balloons, including debut for Labubu and characters from K-pop Demon Hunters. The parade featured performances by Ciara, Lil Jon, and Huntrix members EJ and Ray Ami. Millions of spectators lined the 4-kilometer route as the parade marched through New York City.
Cold air has moved in behind the recent rain, and there has been a big drop in temperatures with a sub-zero morning chill in many parts of Korea. Wearing thin layers stacked together traps heat better and helps your body adjust throughout the day. But today's cold snap will be short-lived as the temperatures will return to above average just in time for the weekend. However, there will be late-night rain in parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces and the capital area on Sunday night. And this afternoon, temperatures will stay chilly with a high of just 7 degrees Celsius here in the capital, Daegu, Gyeongju, Gwangju at just 10 degrees under sunny skies nationwide. Then next week, another round of stronger cold air will settle in, with temperatures dropping down to as low as minus 6 degrees Celsius in the middle of next week here in the capital. So if you're sensitive to the cold, keep a scarf or a neck warmer handy. Covering your neck helps your whole body stay warmer. Please take care in this sudden cold snap.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.